Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Battle for Azeroth. Wanted to do a state of for Elemental Shaman. I have worked my way through Mythic Dungeons and I've been focusing more on world quests and rep and achievement and things like that. So had a good chance to play around with Elemental, and since I got a little better geared for Restoration, I got by proxy, I got better geared for Elemental. So, and Elemental's always been one of those specs that improves as you get better geared. So I think it's safe to say, at least since I've been playing Shaman, that's the way it's been. So if we look through the spell book, not much has changed, really. I think Elemental had the least amount of changes. So that's not right. There we go. If we look at our talents, so really, like I said, not much has changed. Elemental was the only spec of the three to keep their artifact. It's the exact same thing. Stormkeeper. We'll get to that. So starting off, I took Echo of Elements because Lava Burst has 2 charges, and effects that reset the remaining cooldown will instead grant 1 charge. So that's Flame Shock, Lava Burst, your bread and butter for Elemental, of course. Yeah, Elemental Blast, I used this in Warlords, and I think this was the recommended talent for Resto Shaman. I think you're supposed to work it into your rotation to help with your healing and your mana, as I remember. Because I think Water Shield. I think it worked with Critical Strike, if I remember correctly. As does the passive now. That's went too far. I didn't. No, I'm in the wrong spec. Hella. Yes, I think it worked with Critical Strike. The passive now works with Critical Strike. I'm almost positive the actual spell did. I just didn't like this, really. I didn't use it for very long. I don't like abilities that, and this is going to sound really weird considering that I'm on a shaman, but keeping in mind I'm in elemental, I don't like abilities that increase give you kind of a short-term buff, as this does. Yeah. Which, as I've said before, with enhancement, I don't particularly care for the changes they've made to it. I prefer the way it was before, pre-Legion. That's besides the point. I digress. Yeah, so 12 seconds. I mean, it's not a bad ability. I don't see a lot of Shaman taking this unless it's for a specific reason. Echo of Elements has always kind of been my go-to. Exposed Elements or shield increases the damage of your lightning bolt. Target 75%. I still think Echo of Elements is better. I use Lightning Bolt as a filler, basically, when Lava Burst is charging and I don't have enough for Earth Shock. So, and I have some other abilities that work with lightning bolts. So I would say Echo of Elements is probably the default here, unless for some reason you wanted to take one of these others. I could see taking exposed elements before taking elemental burst. Lightning bolt does have a slower cast time, so getting the most out of it when you do use it, I could see being useful. The cooldown, I seem to remember on elemental blast was for me was kind of an issue because it lasts. The buff lasts 2 seconds shorter than the cooldown. So it's a bit weird. Trying to work this into a rotation. Plus, I already have enough. I already have more than enough abilities. I have more abilities than I use. So, Master of Elements. Casting Lava Burst increases the damage of your next nature or frost spell by 20%. So this works well with Lightning Bolt. Of course, Lightning Bolt is nature damage, as well as the Ice Fury Frost Shot combo, which we will get into as we work our way down. Aftershock I've used before. Really don't have any trouble with Maelstrom, though. I generate it fairly quickly. I use it. I use it as soon as I get it. So there's a nice recycling to it. I don't feel like I need this. I feel like it's kind of a wasted ability if I'm not using it, taking full advantage of it. Totem Mastery, I've tried. Quite frankly, just give me back my totems the way they were before. A lot of people take this. A lot of people somewhat swear by this. I've tried it. I personally, I don't think it's that good. I would rather have Master of Elements. This is far more versatile, and it's a passive. It's always on. You don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about replacing these. Or I really don't see a lot of Shaman taking these now. Some every once in a while. I mean, it's a viable talent. I personally just didn't like it. I just don't think it's really worth it when you like I said, generates one Maelstrom. I don't have trouble with Maelstrom. Increases your chance for Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning to trigger Elemental Overload. Okay. Elemental Overload your Lightning Bolt, Ice Fury, Lava Burst, and Chain Lightning. Have a percent chance to trigger a second cast of the same target for 85% of the normal damage and generates less plus 1. So, in case you were wondering, increases flame shock damage over time by 10%. And increases your hit by 2%. I mean, individually, they're not bad together. I'm just kind of eh. I don't really. I shrug my shoulders. All I can say is I've tried it. It wasn't like, oh wow, this is a great ability. I love this. With Elemental Blast, it just wasn't for me. I just there were some certain things I at this point, with as much as I've played the game, I can kind of look at an ability and be like, is this something that works in with my play style? Elemental Blast did not. It's not a bad ability, it just didn't. Totem Mastery, not only did it not work with my playstyle, I just don't think it's very good, personally. Now maybe I'm a little salty because they took away, searing most of our totems. It took away searing fire totem. I think that's what it was called. Or maybe it was just searing totem. I think it was just searing totem. Monetide totem, different things like that. They've basically taken away most of our. I don't even have any totems as a well, except for like CC totems. So this just seems like a placebo to what totems used to be. So, yeah. Spirit Wolf. You transform into a ghost wolf and gain 5% increased movement speed and 5% damage reduction every 1 second, stacking up 4 times. So this is where I think it probably comes down to preference more than really more than what am I trying to say? It comes down to preference more than a default. For lack of a better word. I've tried using Earth Shield as enhancement. I don't even use this as in restoration anymore, as restoration anymore. It just doesn't with my conclusion is with the stats change, with the stats squish. This just doesn't work as well as it could. So when I saw that I could take it as enhancement, I thought, oh, this is interesting. This is interesting. You go through the charges too fast now. For me, I find myself constantly having to reapply it. Static charge is not bad. Keeping in mind, especially since I have war mode on, I use capacitor totem a lot. Not so much on mobs, but on actual PvP. Up to a reduction of 20 seconds. I mean, I prefer Spirit Wolf. A lot of mobs have stun and daze abilities. So if you do get dismounted, this is worthwhile to help get you to either your group or your objective, your world quest objective, what have you. And it works well with spectral recovery. So when you're out in the world, your PvP talents do kick in. So not too bad. And you can always shapeshift out and shapeshift back in to get the damage reduction again. So yeah, so I would say Spirit Wolf or Static Charge. Haven't really seen any Shaman take Earth Shields. I'm trying to think. I've seen quite a few Shaman out in the world in PvP, and I've seen some take Totem Mastery. I haven't seen any take Earth Shield. That comes to mind. Storm Elemental. I actually switched to this from Liquid Magma Totem. I went with Liquid Magma Totem because Earthquake now has a Maelstrom cost. Didn't used to. Before, it was just an on-use ability. You could use it whenever, it just had a cooldown. I wish they would go back to that. Because this was kind of one of the main, if not signature abilities of Elemental. And now I find myself hardly using it. So I took this, so I had a AoE that I could use on, just whenever without any kind of cost or restriction. And it just really was a little lackluster. So, because I took Stormkeeper, I was looking at Storm Elemental again, and it says, while Storm Elemental is active, each time you cast Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning, the cast time of Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning is reduced by 3%, stacking up 20 times. So it's still a little slower, cast time. However, the closer you do get to 20%, I mean, you're firing them off almost instant casts. So, plus you have a elemental that is doing damage as well. So, replaces fire elemental. I found myself not using fire elemental. So that was kind of my thinking. I said, well, Liquid Magma Totem's really not working out. And I'm not using fire elemental, so let's switch some things around so we're using our abilities a little more fully. High voltage, lightning bolt, and chain lightning have a 50% normal chance to cause a second elemental overload. I really don't use either one that much to justify this Storm Elemental, I think, or Liquid Magma Totem. I've had some people kind of debate this. For raids, this might work. This might be better. I can keep on some rares or some world quests like mini bosses. Of course, Earth Elemental taunts, and then Storm Elemental. So you kind of have a little mini army. It kind of reminds me of Enhancement with Spirit Wolves and, or I guess it's Feral Spirits now. Feral Wolves and Earth Elemental and all of that. So yeah, and I've seen improvements. I'm doing better with this. So especially in combination with Stormkeeper, those first few what would be normally slow casts, are instant cast, and then your 4-5 kind of charges up in stacking to 20s. So Nature's Guardian. When your health is brought below 35%, you instantly heal for 20% of your damage. Cannot occur more than once every 45 seconds. So the Shaman equivalent of Cheat Death, basically the rogue ability. For the next 10 seconds, 100% of your damage and healing is converted into healing for up to 3 nearby injured party or raid members. I used to use this in Miss. Seems like it gave a haste buff of some kind or some kind of damage increase. At that time, I could be wrong. I could be mistaken. I seem to remember that. And then Windrush Totem. Continuously grants all allies that pass within 10 yards 6% increased movement speed. I've seen some Shaman take this. This is a bit of a weird one, especially kind of in this, this has to do with health. Nature's Guardian has to do with health. Ancestral Guidance has to do with health. And then you have speed boost, speed increase. So it's a little strange. Ancestral's Guidance was a semi-situational ability. Didn't work well, as I remember before, in situations where you had a lot of ads on you. Which is why I said it seems like it gave some kind of damage or haste increase. It seems like that's why I remember taking it, because it, or maybe it was just healing. Maybe I'm thinking of something else now that I think about it more. I may have used it as a cooldown to help heal myself, now that I think about it. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. At any rate, I think, unless for some reason you specifically want Moonrush Totem, like for an instance or something, Nature's Guardian is probably best. I have seen some people take this in dungeons and raids and things like that, which is, I will admit it does have some usefulness. Similar to a Druid's with Savage Roar, that gives everybody a speed increase. It is a target location ability, which to me kind of limits it. I personally am not a big fan of target location abilities, so for me it would be a coordination issue in using this. That's why I don't know that I've ever taken it outside of just playing with it when it was new, or the talents got reset, something like that. So I've used Nature's Guardian for before. I think it was higher up. I think it was where Aftershock was at one point, if I remember correctly. And that works fine. Especially as Elemental, you're not really a melee class. However, your targets do tend to end up in melee range more often than not. So having a bit of a safety net is not a terrible thing. Ice Fury. So I started using this in, I think it was mid to end. I think it was mid, like around mid Legion. Kind of a throwback to the old, older Shaman days. Hurls frigid ice at the target, dealing frost damage and causing your next 4 frost shocks to deal 100% increased damage. So, yeah. Not too bad. I like this combination. This is kind of my cooldown burst damage combination. This is kind of my, the same way I use Flame Shock and Lava Burst. Ice Fury and Frost Shock is kind of my substitutes. So they work well. And they do a massive amount of damage. So and Frost Shock is slowing movement speed by 50%. So not too bad. If it wasn't for this, I've taken all 3 of these at one point or another. Primal Elementalist. Your fire, earth, fire, and storm elementals are drawn from primal elementals 80% more powerful than regular elementals with additional abilities, and you gain direct control over them. So not bad. I think I would be... It's toss-up which I use more, Ice Fury or Storm Elemental. So this would be... I feel like I would be losing something if I use this. I really only use Earth Elemental for its taunt. And I really only use Storm Elemental to help with burst damage in certain situational abilities. So Ice Fury is something I can use at any time. Primal Elementus is something that if either one of these are on cooldown, I'm not going to be using them. So, and then Earth and Rage. Your damaging spells inside the earth around you come to your aid for 6 seconds, repeatedly dealing nature damage to your most recently attacked target. So this used to be our, I think this used to be Molten Earth. I think that's what it was, or Molten Lava or something. I think it was Molten Earth. Yeah. Used to be our passive. I wish it still was our passive. That was one of the coolest things about Elemental, if not one of the coolest looking abilities, the visuals of it. People commented on at the time and before was one of the coolest visuals in the game. Like I said, I've taken this. Ice Fury does by far more damage several times over. And it lets me use... Normally, I before I started taking Ice Fury, I didn't use Frost Shock. Like, at all. Like, not to slow, not anything. I don't even think I had it on my command bar at different times. So yeah, so just a nice little like I said, kind of substitute for Flame Shock and Lava Burst. So yeah, I like having a damaging ability, or kind of like I like the whole, Flame Shock, Lava Burst, Ice Fury, Flame Frost Shock kind of idea. And then, as I said, Stormkeeper, which is exactly the same as our artifact ability. So, charge yourself with lightning, causing your next 2 lightning bolts or chain lightnings to be instant cast and trigger an elemental overload on every target. So, not exactly the same. Raise the Fist of Raiden to the sky and absorb all nearby electrical energy, causing your next 3 casts to lightning bolt and chain lightning to be instant and deal 200% increased damage. So, yeah. Normally, I would always say take Ascendance by default. Ascendance was a bit of a weird spell to use for Elemental. Worked well with Enhancement, works well with Restoration. This used to be our... I want to say this used to be our level 85 spell that we would get leveling. I think that's when I first got it. Stormkeeper's just better. 1 minute cooldown for what it does. It's just, yeah, it takes arguably your 2 worst abilities and it makes them your two of your I don't want to say best abilities, but 2 of your better abilities. So yeah, and like I said, with Storm Elemental, you get those first 2 casts off with an Elemental Overload. And then your speed's increasing every cast of one of these. So I only stop casting Lightning Bolt to cast a Lava Burst proc. Generally, is what I've been noticing. So, unlimited power. Your spells cause an elemental overload. You gain 2% haste for 10 seconds. Gaining a stack does not refresh the duration. So, again, I've tried this. It seems like I played with this, and I just don't think it's very good. Does this have a... Yeah, this has less than a 40% chance of activating, so I think it activates quite regularly. Yeah. I don't like setting abilities up around something like this, so I have it set up so that I can do damage regardless of what other spells are doing. If as I said, if Lava Burst is on cooldown, if I can't use their shock, I have Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, I have Ice Fury, Frost Shock. These are good to use while Lava Burst is coming off a cooldown. Ice Fury does grant Maelstrom, which is probably one reason why I probably don't have trouble with my Maelstrom. So, and then for my PvP talents, control of lava replaces lava surge or lava burst damage increased by 25%. Your flame shock damage over time has a 10% chance to reset the cooldown on lava burst and increase the damage by 25%, stacking up 3 times. Earth Fury. Now, this is one I use a lot out in the world. On mobs, PvP, what have you, casting Earth Shock when you have at least 100 Maelstrom will stun the target for 2 seconds. So I almost exclusively use Earth Shock when this procs. So, yeah. And then, of course, Spectral Recovery. When it goes for Ghost Wolf, you heal 30% health every 2 seconds, increase the movement speed of Ghost Wolf by an additional 10 seconds. So, not too bad. We got some different, we got pretty good PvP talents. You have a fair amount to choose from. Yeah. For me, as with the regular talents, I like the passive ones, the ones that, I find that if I can just run through a rotation and then just have passives or procs do, kind of do their effects while I'm running through my rotation, that seems to work best for me. So there you go. There is the state of Elemental Shaman. So I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you for watching.